In this video I take you on a journey through the books that Moses allegedly composed. His writings explain the diversion from Yahweh's original plan. Yahweh created Adam's body from dust, and he used his own breath or spirit to provide life in the lungs of Adam's body. Adam was a spiritual being with a body made of dust. Soon after creating Adam, he identified his solitude as a problem. He solved it by giving him Eve. Eve was to be his mate, someone to assist him and accompany him. She was the result of what we may today call a type of cloning, not birth. Yahweh created her from Adam, and by doing so ensured they share the same life and spirit. Different to cloning, however, they were not identical. Their chromosomal constitution differs, most notably those responsible for sexual characteristics. Eve treasured the life of Adam and embraced his purpose. Yahweh tasked Adam to rule the created world. He created man completely sovereign and with enough intellectual proficiency to rule. Intellectual proficiency is important, but not enough. Governance requires ethics. Moral standards are essential to guide all social, scientific, and educational decisions. Morality ultimately guides all human activity. Adam and Eve were sovereign, but without moral capacity. This was no problem because as spirit beings they had direct access to Yahweh for moral guidance. The original plan was that Adam and Eve, as sovereign beings, would have governed the world with Yahweh's morals by means of spiritual interaction. They would have managed with his intent by having direct access to his mind. Yahweh would have aligned all decisions by Adam and Eve with his morals to complement his creation. In Yahweh's eyes, this was ideal and intentional. For Adam and Eve not to have knowledge of right and wrong had satisfied all the conditions conducive to mutual love. The reason for Yahweh's unwillingness for man to have ownership of moral competence was not for his own sake, but for theirs. To have moral competence is a divine attribute. As fully autonomous beings with moral capacity, they would have no need for Yahweh. They would have become gods. A direct consequence of own morality is accountability. Knowledge of good and evil brought them liability, and any action that stemmed from adverse morality would in future be imputed. Whatever ethical rule they implement, and whatever standard they set thereafter, due to accountability, they were liable for that decision. Yahweh was, up to that point, the sole proprietor of ethical standards, but since their decision they became justly independent. Own morality changed them into legal entities, and they became answerable. It brought them responsibility, and in the event of ungodly standards, they become indictable. The question is, why would Yahweh have given Adam and Eve access to knowledge of right and wrong if he knew the disastrous consequences it would have held for his creation? The answer is to be found in the conditions describing their relationship. Any two sovereign individuals need to agree on the moral standards defining their relationship. If not in harmony on the moral standards, the relationship is not secure. Yahweh therefore gave them the choice to accept his morals or not. Their rejection of his morals in favor of their own had meant that Adam and Eve parted from the relationship with the living God. When they decided to have knowledge of right and wrong, he withdrew his spirit. Deprived from Yahweh's mind, they died spiritually. I envisage that Yahweh must have taken Adam through all the implications of his choice, but I also appreciate how strongly the attribute of moral discernment must have appealed to Adam. Yahweh forbid the tree of knowledge of good and evil and strongly encouraged them to continue living in oneness with him. He forewarned them that knowledge of good and evil would separate them from him. Being fully sovereign with full moral capacity would mean they become like gods, and that negate the requirement to have a God. Furthermore, they will not only die spiritually but also physically, because accountability would bring them the consequences of contrary ethics that would not stand the test of Yahweh's righteousness. They would become mortal. To Yahweh, human ethics equals adverse ethics. Human ethics may be sound in some respects, but that is not the point. No matter how sound, it does not lift the liability of ethical competence. The liability separates us from a righteous God. The unsound morals are the secondary, agonizing aftermath. The primary consequence of Adam and Eve's choice was the separation from Yahweh due to ethical competence. The secondary problem is sin, where sin is defined as actions contrary to Yahweh's morals. Moral competence brought us separation from Yahweh. It broke the oneness bond we had with Him. In biblical language, this equates to dying. If that is not enough, the liability that comes with own ethics deprived us from innocence. With inherent ignorance and weakness, we became the bearer of sin. This relation between sin and flesh, or sin and blood, is so tight that one Bible author wrote that the Messiah was made sin, where he could have said the Messiah was made flesh and blood. Adam and Eve's choice had further consequences. Central to all morality is the responsibility towards life. Soon after the decision to eat from the tree of discernment, Cain killed his brother Abel. This act demonstrated that the ability to ethically rule over life has a dark side to it. Not only can we rationalize the existence of life, but we also obtain the moral capacity to justify its termination. Selfish reign endangers the life of the innocent. To preserve life of the innocent appeals to the minds of many who are groomed in divine thinking. To preserve life is best secured by legislation. Only law can protect the weak, but law is impossible to enforce in the absence of authority. Yahweh introduced authority on earth to protect morality and ultimately life on earth. The result is men who gained authority over women, the rich that rule over the poor, the strong over the weak, and knowledge imposing on ignorance. Like knowledge of right and wrong, authority is also divine, but with our adverse morality, authority leads to slavery, exploitation, and abuse. Love is supposed to steer authority towards the provision of the weak and the preservance of life, but in the world we created with our own morality, the absence of love and the presence of selfishness cause authority to neglect the poor and contempt life. The last consequence of moral capacity was the pain, struggling, and disasters that accompanied a self-guiding human race. Thorns and thistles intensify our struggle for survival, and adversities strike humanity with regular intervals. Women became providers of life through conception and bear children in pain and anguish. We cannot criticize Yahweh for the consequences of our construed morals, and we cannot blame Him for imputing sin, judgment, and punishment. He has no obligation to provide us with moral direction, but He does because He loves. We inherited discernment from Adam and Eve. It is the knowledge of right and wrong, and it enables us to discern good from evil. With discernment, we construct our own moral standards that make sense and becomes logical to us. Many peruse this their entire life. These morals become our comfort zone. We depend on it. We find it exceedingly difficult to depart from it. It becomes our security instead of our enemy. Most world religions aim to strengthen own understanding with quality morals. In the event of the Christian religion, even though founded on biblical text, it will not give us eternity. The true gospel asks from us to depart from discernment and restore spiritual interaction with the author of morals. It requires of us to become like children who depend on their parents for ethical guidance. The new covenant between Yahweh and man does not contain the morals, only His undertaking to provide it. Most religions, even the Christian one, is more concerned with defining the morals than to receive and internalize them. God bless.